Welcome to another edition of Between the Lines, a conversation series with today's brightest thinkers, innovators, and literary minds. My name is Stephen Long. I'm the Director of Arts and Culture here at the New York Irish Center. And it's my great honor to introduce to you today two wonderfully gifted individuals, filmmaker and writer Colin Broderick and actor Michael Kelly. Colin Broderick was born in County Tyrone and moved to New York at the age of 20. He has published two memoirs, Orangutan and That's That, has had two plays see full production runs, and is the director and writer of two feature films, Emerald City and the upcoming A Bend in the River. He is the co-founder of the Poor Mouth Theater Company here in the Bronx, New York. Actor Michael Kelly was born in Philadelphia but raised in Lawrenceville, Georgia. He attended Coastal Carolina University in South Carolina with the intention of studying law, but quickly changed his mind after taking an acting elective. He's a lifetime member of the Actors Studio and has appeared in over 60 films and television shows. Among them, Law & Order, The Good Wife, The Changeling, Everest, Man of Steel, Jack Ryan, and, most famously, as Doug Stamper on Netflix's House of Cards. He lives in New York City with his wife and two children.
My old buddy.
Hey, Mike.
Good to see you, pal.
What's going on, pal?
Guess that's all
Nice
relative.
to see you.
Seeing one another is taking on a whole new meaning these days, isn't it?
It sure has. And you're in Budapest?
Yes, I am. And you?
Yeah, New Jersey.
On the
I
coast
moved.
there.
You know, I was in Woodstock, I think, the last time you were here.
Yeah. Yep.
And then we packed up and moved down the Jersey Shore. So I'm living on the water now, which is better for my head.
Good place for a writer.
It's good for this writer. Yeah. Yeah. I have a habit of, getting too comfortable in this room. But I have three young kids, so it doesn't allow me to stay in here. So being within walking distance of a beach is
Yeah, it's funny. I've never worked except for like a brief, couple weeks here or there, but I've never done a show or a film in New York City and have had to physically work, on my scripts and memorization and all that with the family around a lot. And I can't even imagine what that's like for you as a writer to try with little hellions running around, how difficult that must be, because even when I'm just prepping a job before I leave, I find it so difficult. But as a writer, that's just memorizing. As a writer, I can't even imagine. Like I would think you would need Ted Quiet.
Well, one thing about me is I've always been good at writing, even if there's noise and confusion going on. I can sort of just sit down and get lost anyway. But Rachel and I basically worked out a sort of you take an hour and a half, I'll take an hour and a half, and we just kind of split the day up like that, because since last Bruce was born. So I have a 5-year-old,
right,
a 12-year-old, and Bruce was born in February of last year going into this thing. So it's not like there's a free moment, we don't have minions taking care of the kids. Somebody's got to be downstairs with Bruce entertaining him. So we just switch off and do the running back and forward, picking the kids up, dropping them off. But at the beginning of this whole thing, when we went into lockdown, it was nuts. But after a little while, we developed a sort of nice family. It's so intimate because we spend so much time together.
Yeah.
And I'm now, that guy, the dad who sits at the table with his family every day.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. We do the same thing when I'm home, but it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And one thing about this pandemic, I feel, is it's brought families a lot closer together, sort of brought us back to where we maybe have lost sight of in in years, decades past, right? I feel like it's really brought the family unit together. Anyways, listen,
I think so. Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
sorry. This morning I was thinking, and I woke up and I was like, my God, how long we've known one another, how long we've been friends. And it, first of all, that kind of thing touches my heart. Like, I'm just like, oh, that's a beautiful thing, man. It's a friendship in New York City that has endured 15, 16 years. And I was thinking back on those early years, I don't know, like 2005 or so, when you joined the poker game that I had going for a decade. At the time, you were still in the sauce, as was myself. Some crazy ass memories, beautiful memories at the same time. But I'm
funny
to be alive, not just to have this friendship, but to be alive still.
To be alive. How insane. I remember games that we had where it wasn't really obvious if we were going to leave the game alive. And that's not an exaggeration, as you know.
Literally. And it wasn't for fear of someone pulling a 6-shooter out from under the table with a hand. It was just the mere debauchery that we were involved in.
I do have a wonderful memory, though, of it was a bonding moment for you and I, where the room that we played the poker in needed all these shelves and stuff, and you and I showed up there on a Sunday, with a skill saw and a hammer and some screws, and we started building these shelves. And the image that that stays with me is it was about 5 p.m, and everybody else had gone on a Sunday, and we'd ran out of wood, and me and you, we were in the zone. It had become this artistic endeavor, and we were like, we need more wood. Where are we going to get more wood? And you and I went out in Midtown and started scavenging the streets for wood. And we found 2 wood pallets, and I'll never forget running down the road, and we're in the middle of the street, and you've got a pallet and I'm 20 feet behind you with a pallet running through traffic.
I mean, just the thought of that, New York City, even on a Sunday, there's never like a quiet time in the city, and there we are through with pallets of wood. That's right. You are. Have you been doing that kind of stuff there to your house? Obviously, not stealing wood pallets, but fixing it up.
You know, I did in Woodstock. I did that for 3 years, but this house, thank God, unless there's a light bulb to be changed,
it was ready.
I'm all good. I don't even have a lawn; it's gravel. I left my lawnmower in Woodstock, in the shed. I was like, okay, whoever, I want somebody else to have this thing. I'm all good now with mowing lawns. One of the things that's happened, obviously, is my time with having 3 kids has become much more precious.
Yes.
So I don't want to be doing, I love to go and do something hands-on, like build a few shelves. I think the neighbors think I'm like this crazy Irish guy who just builds shelves in his garage. The kids are like playing on the street, and the saw is going in the garage door every time. It's fucking love it. And they're probably wondering how could he need more shelves? But somehow I'm like, you remember the old Irish guys when they would have a house in Ireland, in New York? Is like this immigrant thing where it's like the basement had to be like all wood. Like the old panel wood.
Yes.
I have a modern version of that. But it's just like pine shelves.
I love it. So it was shortly after that, though, that you really got, we were nuts and we were insane. It took me much longer, but it was shortly after that you got sober, right? And
2007, 2006, I went upstate to dry out and didn't quite make it. Wound up going back in the sauce, going to jail for a couple of months, as you recall. And then it was 2007, June 2007, I finally, the light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my God, I have a problem. This is not normal. And I was like, 39 years old, penniless, living upstate. I didn't even have a relationship at that time, and gotten to that point where where it's like people just get like really wary about seeing you showing up.
Right. They're like, what's it gonna be?
He's coming. Oh, okay.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, let's see what happens.
And then you were published shortly, or got a deal.
So so what happened was I went upstate, and this is a true story. One of the things that happened to me at the end of my drinking was, I'll never forget it. I was in my apartment on 9th Avenue one night, and I was going through the DTs, and I had the bottle of whiskey there, and I'm alone, and I had this really dark night of the soul, where I realized I was staring into the void, and what was staring back at me was my own unfulfilled potential. I had this thought: if I die here in this apartment in Hell's Kitchen, the landlord's going to come in, he's going to sweep out all the old bottles and the ashtrays, and they're going to take me out in a box, and that's the fucking end of the story. This guy had talent, and I realized I hadn't written anything in 8 years.
Wow.
And, I started drinking again when I was 31. And it was just as I had my first play produced up in the Bronx. I had a first short story published, and then I'm drinking. And I didn't write for 8 years. Just drank. Throughout my whole 30s.
Yeah, right. A decade gone.
A decade. And then I came out of it, and I'm like, oh my God, I have this thing where I'm like, people are like, oh, I'm a writer because I did these couple of things, but I'd done nothing. Hadn't a book published, never made a movie, didn't know how to make a movie, hadn't a clue. Didn't even know if I could still sort of wangle, if I had enough brain cells left, after all the drugs and the alcohol and the madness, to sort of start at 39 and build my life again. And when I went upstate to dry out, at Tony's farmhouse. Tony took me up there, thank God. And I remember sweating it out in those first days. And I literally had a yellow writing pad, and I started writing every day like a lunatic. And I was like, I'm going to write myself out of this. And
write myself sober.
I'm gonna write myself sober. And I did that what I was writing. I continued writing that for the whole year in jail, when I got out of jail. And when I finally got sober in 2007, I took the pages I had to an agent. I wound up with Jane Distel, who represented Barack Obama, signed me. And then Random House bought the memoir.
And it's so good. That book, I was blown away. That still to this day is one of my favorite books.
Thank you, Nick.
Yours, but in general. And maybe because it struck a chord personally as well.
Right.
But, I wasn't sober at that time, and but it just, I think what I find so interesting and compelling about your writing, and that book in particular, is the honesty, the vulnerability and the honesty that just seeps out of those pages. I think is one of your greatest attributes as a writer, and has gone through that way to your films as well.
Those two books, the memoirs that I wrote for, the first one, Orangutan, it was like I was I threw up. It was like, oh, here's what I did. I got off the plane, and here's the first 20 years of my life, or in New York. I got off the plane in New York. Here's that 20 years. And it was just like a roller coaster of madness, construction and car crashes and jails and hospitals and blah, blah, blah. And then after that, it was my agent, Jane Distel, who kept pushing me and saying, you can't publish a book like that and not sort of say why. And that's what forced me into writing a memoir about my childhood growing up in Northern Ireland. So then I wrote That's That, and I didn't want to write that book. And that was the book that saved my life. because it wasn't until I wrote that book that I realized and was confronted with all the pain that I was carrying and trying to avoid and self-medicating. And it wasn't until I went, people think you get sober and then it's like this wonderful pink cloud and you're free.
Yeah.
The opposite is true. You get sober and then you're confronted with all the shit that caused you to drink in the first place.
Right.
And then you have to deal with that pain without any medication.
Right.
And there's no escape. It's like I'm losing my fucking mind for days at a time and there's no relief.
Yeah.
and that
you're lucky to have writing as a therapeutic. And maybe for me, it's acting, you know, those ways of just letting shit come out of you, you know.
Expressing, yes.
I probably still haven't addressed everything for myself. that's another story.
There's time.
I plan on having at least a couple more decades, God willing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens to be one of my father's favorite books ever. He loves that one. My dad being, you know, first generation born here in the U.S., his father came over. But so I want to talk about after that, Church's End, obviously, and how that one came about, because again, another one that I loved, another book of yours. And I just want to talk about that for a minute, or let you talk about that for a minute, because again, that was another one that I just ripped through. And so, like I said, honest, compelling storytelling.
Yeah, it's funny. Church. When I wrote Church End, I was 26, right? I was like 26 years old. I was going to Lehman College studying with Billy Collins, who then becomes my mentor and friend and poet, two-time poet laureate of the United States. And we're still very dear friends. He's a beautiful human being. We're still very close and are in touch quite a bit. But I wrote that novel while I was studying with him in Lehman College. I studied poetry for 4 years, and then it went in a box and it stayed there until I moved here to this house in New Jersey and was unloading finally, like, okay, I'm staying here. This is my office. I started taking out all the old stuff out of boxes.
Right, that's right. You addressed that in the foreword. I remember. That's right.
And I found the manuscript at the beginning of we just gone into COVID and the lockdown, and I took it out and I thought, if I lose this paper copy, this old dusty paper copy, it's gone. I don't have a digital drive with this on it somewhere. This is it. So I decided to start typing it up as something to do, started typing up the manuscript, giving it a very little of a polish as I went. It's hard to avoid doing that just because you want to clean up the writing.
That was going to be my question. How much of it changed?
Story didn't change.
No, just
story didn't change. I polished it, and obviously you can't help but throw in a little bit of, you know, okay, I'm a better writer now. I can say that line better than.
That's what I was about to say. Like, there's a part of you that was probably like, wow, yeah, I was 20.
But having said that, I also made a very conscious attempt to try and leave it as broken and as honest to the 26-year-old that wrote it, because I didn't want it, because there's a purity, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just telling a story. I didn't know how to structure a novel.
Right.
And I just said, let me keep it to what it is, because there's no expectation. I'm going to self-publish this novel and I'll do the readings. And if people like it, they can buy it. And it's really, I didn't have an expectation of this needs to be a bestseller. I just was enjoying the process. And for me, that book was very healing in many ways, because it brought me back to being excited just about writing. It wasn't like I was trying to get away from being this drunk. It wasn't like I was trying to make up 10 years of missed writing. I was like, oh, I just want to have fun. I'm laughing. I'm enjoying the story, and I'm enthusiastic and excited about it. And then I self-publish it, and people love it. It's just a, you know,
yeah, they love it.
It's a no nonsense, simple, hardcore sort of rock and roll, you know.
It is rock and roll, man. And, you know, being a former rock and roller myself and the debaucherous individual that I was, I enjoyed so many of the stories that the mattress, of course, is one of my favorite parts of the
True
entire.
stories.
Yeah.
That was, and what's funny about the novel is the novel. The novel, there's my younger brother Brendan. I probably shouldn't say that even now on camera. But all those stories, we lived in Church End, we squatted. The Baz was a real person. The Burner was somebody I worked with in San Francisco that I incorporated into that story. So the characters were real. And I made up a lot. I took all the stuff that I knew because I didn't know any better. And then I built this story about it with all the people and the location and the life that I knew. So in many ways, Church End is almost as autobiographical as my biographies.
which is scary, because when you think about the fact that you wrote so much of this before you even turned 40, and most people in a lifetime live not even 100th of the insane experiences that you've had.
My wife Rachel will tell you I'm obsessed with age, because I have had this sort of Benjamin Button existence. You know, I wind up at 40 looking like I'm 90, and you seen me. I was a fucking mess. Yes. I didn't even have any teeth left. You know, I had a dentist, Ramin Tabib, and his wife, Dr. Mello, who literally took me in and fixed my mouth for free. Yeah. It was like one of the greatest gifts of sobriety. I couldn't even smile.
I know, I'll never forget seeing you the first time after you had that done. And that's all I could, when you told me the story about them and how they had helped you, that's all I could think about for so long, because I had seen my friend smile for the first time in so long. Like, just that beautiful, like, this is me, man. This is me.
To come back and be human and be, you know, sort of connected. And not everybody is that lucky. I was 40 years old, you know, in my early 40s when I met them. And, you know, being in that situation, not everybody is lucky enough that they have the life energy left to, like, sort of turn your life around and then do all these things that you dreamed of.
Yeah.
And I literally went after living my dream life. I was like, okay, I screwed up a lot, but I'm going to live. Like I said, when I look into the void, I always think of that moment. I'm going to live my life to my full potential, whatever that is. And I may screw up and I may make some bad shit, but I'm going to keep forging ahead, because I know that something in me needs to express itself. And if I don't, I'll be on my deathbed thinking, why didn't you at least take the chance?
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah.
Maybe
and you know, again, one of the reasons that I have the great admiration for you that I do is that thing that you talk about there, about that ability to, the ability to take risks and not care, you know, and that goes back. I remember very early on in acting school, and they said, the professor put forth the question, you know, what makes a great actor? And everybody had an answer. And she was like, no, it is the ability to make an absolute ass of yourself and not care what anyone thinks.
Yes.
And it's essentially just I'm going to take a chance. Mm-hmm. And here you were. So you get sober, you write these books, you publish these books, you are celebrated for doing so. And then you're like, nah, you know what? I need to be making movies too. Like, it's just like, I'm going to start making movies, you know?
But that's the part of that Benjamin Button thing, because really, I always loved movies. Mm-hmm. I realized the number one thing I realized in myself was I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. And I don't even like the terms writer, literary word. All that shit makes me really uneasy, because it sounds a little too fucking out there, a little bit too far up its own ass, to be honest. And I'm just a guy who likes to tell stories. and I like to watch good stories, and I like to be entertained, and I'll watch a lot of movies and I'll read a lot of books, and I realize that's really at my essence what the stuff that excites me.
Yeah.
And
And you could tell that it does. I mean, I rewatched Bend in the River this morning to just wanted to talk to you, and I hadn't seen it since you first showed it to me. And first of all, I mean, it's just such a beautiful film. It's an absolute love letter to Ireland, filled with ghosts, and it's so many things. But I think obviously, like much of your work, this is autobiographical in a sense, right?
totally.
Yeah.
Maybe for me, it was, when I started making the movie, I didn't even know. I was trying to raise funds to go home and shoot this movie. And I'm telling people, about what the script is, but really part of me knew that I hadn't a clue what the movie was. I didn't know. So it was like this thing where I had to sort of convince everybody to go along with me so that I could get into the experience of it, and then have this experience. And as you know, Mike, being a filmmaker, you can't tell your financiers you're making a movie about poetry or you're going to explore this emotional sort of literary feeling you have. They're not buying that. So you got
because they're like, guess what doesn't sell?
Guess what doesn't sell? Don't do this, dude. The fuck, man. What's the romance? What's the action? Is there like, does somebody get shot? And sort of going there and with a bunch of people who trusted me enough to sort of go on this ride with me. And, the shooting of the movie, I had one moment where I'm in... Like I'm in the classroom where I get beaten by my headmaster, and I wind up, when I go to shoot that day, that's the only school that's available. We try to shoot in another school. That's the only school. Then that's the only classroom. And then we open up the closets, and it's like in the back, they're like, let's get some old stuff to make the room look like it's that time. And all the old stuff from my childhood was still in the closets in the back of the room.
Wow.
And we sort of dress up the room, and I'm sitting in the back of the classroom watching this scene, and I'm literally thinking, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what have you done? Like, you've come back and created subconsciously this moment of emotional impact in your life to sort of see it unfold and deal with it in real time.
It worked.
And then you take a look at John Duddy, John Duddy's character. So John Duddy, many people don't know this, in the beginning of the Troubles, 1972, you have like the Bloody Sunday in Derry. Yeah. First boy who gets shot in Derry is Jackie Duddy, John Duddy's uncle. So you have this iconic image that's almost like the iconic image that begins the Troubles, of the priest with the little white flag, and he's carrying the boy. That's the bloody boy.
That's Duddy that's being carried in the footage.
That's John Duddy's uncle. And then John Duddy becomes a boxer, and then he's an actor. And here he is in this movie. And we've got the old footage of like the priest coming out, and he's having memories. He's the writer having memories about the Troubles, but it's his uncle, and then he's named for his uncle, John Jackie Duddy.
I did not even know that was. I love the use of that footage, the real footage from the Troubles. I love the use of it in the film, and it was at the fence, right?
Yes, they're having yes. He's out for a walk, and he meets the old farmer, Seamus O'Rourke, who was amazing.
Which, by the way, is Seamus a ghost or is he real?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
that's the sort of question you have to ask yourself. Yes.
How many of those characters are ghosts to
What's
him?
Real?
How much of the story happens in his head and how much of the story happens in reality for the character. And I think one of the cool things about it is watching it, you can say, one person can say, well, it is real. One person can say, no, it was obviously not real. He says he died thought he died a couple of days. He says he thought he did. So it's this thing.
So what is real and what isn't? It was sort of me trying to make sense of Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is so complicated. I lived there for 20 years and I still don't understand it fully. And then the impact of memory on all of that. I wrote a memoir about it, but the memoir is also a version of the truth.
Sure, it's your version.
And in the movie, I want to sort of try and play with what's real? What's not real? Did I remember this correctly? Because even the event in the classroom gets questioned.
Yep.
Did I remember it correctly? That's my version of it.
Yeah.
So the whole movie is
because what's his name says, no, he saved you, and you remember the girl saving you, and that whole beautiful moment with him and that character, who was such a beautiful, fascinating, and touching character.
Beautiful. John Connor, such an amazing character, such an amazing actor. Beautiful.
Yeah, very well played. Everyone very well played. I thought.
My brother Brendan played the IRA guy, the hardcore. What a beautiful performance. Really, really brutal and,
haunting.
But, and for his character, I felt like, again, I tried to humanize. Here's this character who you could paint as very one-dimensional. But again, coming from Northern Ireland and knowing how complicated it was, I wanted to humanize him and have people go, oh my God, he's human too.
Right. And you see that when he has the confrontation with John in the bedroom and he's got the gun, and I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but then what else he then proceeds to do with the gun, and you're like, wow, he's so damaged.
Damaged.
All damaged from what took place there. And I think the most beautiful thing about the film to me is at the end when through your poetry, you see these beautiful images of Ireland, of the tree and the explaining of the green and how everything is sort of just comes back together. And you're like, it's sort of that thing you were talking about, like, well, what's real and what's not? And well, there's this and there's that. And all I know is this.
And what's important.
What's exactly, and what's at its core. And I think that it's just, the end of that film makes you feel so good because you're like, wow, what did I just see? And then it's just so beautifully said. In case you missed it, this is what you saw. It's like, and it's so well done.
Thank you so much, Mike. And it's funny because we shot the movie before the pandemic, and it's only now, we have the distributor. There's going to be a release later in the year, probably September. The movie is now in consideration for best movie in the IFTAs, best actor, best director. A lot of the score, Colin McNumber is all in consideration, and it's amazing to see it start to sort of build this sort of life now, and people getting to see it. And again, I'm at a point in my life where my expectation is, it's not about like, oh, I want to be successful anymore. I've had so many moments where, like, going to the going to the movie premieres and seeing the celebrities and blah blah blah. I've done all that stuff too, which was a lot of fun. I love that, but I don't have that as my driving. That's not like I want to go fishing with my neighbors. That's what I want to do. I want to tell stories. I want to play with my kids, and I want to go fishing with the guys on my block. Go out on the boat and go on at night and go fishing.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I will not lie and say that, the times that I've been nominated for an Emmy, that I cry every time. It never changes how I feel about it, but it's not why I do it. I do what I do because what I realized during the pandemic, and I knew, but what I really realized during the pandemic is that I had to do what I do for a living. I'm never going to retire because I love it and it's what makes me go. But you know what else does? My kids, my wife. my family time. That's what gives me the power to do what I do. And we're exactly the same way in that way. And that's what it's about. We do what we do so that we get that other time to do it. and you know,
that's it, Mike. There is the end of the interview, really. We come full circle.
Yeah.
To this place of, because you and I, in the time we've known each other, I've watched your career also, you know, go from, like, you know, you were Clint Eastwood had you in the Changeling, and then all of a sudden it's House of Cards and Doug Stamper, and now it's Jack Ryan, and you know, you've done these amazing roles, and where I'm like, it's just amazing to see the journey you're on as well. And as I say, it's almost like we've come full circle. It's like we get to do the work and come home to the family. And you know, I'll just end on this. Every night I struggled a lot with religion in my life, and should I teach my kids to pray, and should I bring them to church, because I was raised Catholic and all that stuff
as well.
And sometime during the beginning of the pandemic, as we all started really realizing, we got to sit down to a meal together every night. There's 5 of us, we sit down and we have a meal, and we go around the table and we say, each person says what they're grateful for. And the kids do it, I do it, Rachel does it. And that has become our prayer. We live in gratitude. And the kids get to live in gratitude, and they think about it. What is it that I'm grateful for? What was a good thing that happened today? And, you know, it might be Sam saying, I'm grateful for Erica. It might be Erica saying she's grateful for her bicycle, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's this beautiful thing where you actually get to remind yourself every single day to come back to the center. And what is it that I'm grateful for? Not what do I want?
Yeah.
What am I grateful for?
You know what's so funny? We're gonna add that to ours now, and I'm gonna give you something to add to yours, because it's just so funny you should say that, and how similar we are. Because I too was raised very Catholic, and went to, you know, Sunday school, went to mass every week, and the whole thing. We've gone away from that. We teach our children to be good people. And maybe that's the foundation that both of us got being raised Catholic. I don't know, but I think it's more to do with my parents and how they raised us as individuals and people. And what we do every night at the dinner table is best and worst. And the kids get to say, and we say as well every single night, the best part of your day, worst part of your day.
Awesome.
And if anything, like if there's any parents out there watching with young kids, if you ask your kid, how was school today? Or what'd you do today? All the parents out there are going to say, nothing. But if you say, what's the best and what's the worst, you get your kids to talk. And it starts, and we are never without conversation at dinner. So I'm going to add gratitude. What do you?
And I'm gonna add the what was the worst part. I love that. I love it. It brings it to another level. I love that. Very good.
Best and worst. Yeah.
Love you, brother.
Oh, buddy, it's so good to see you.
Good to see
catch
you.
up, and I can't wait for the world to see your film, man. It's a real treat.
And I can't wait to see you in person.
Me too, and hug you.
And hug you.
Real hugs, man. I'm like, yes!
Love you, brother.
Love you too, pal. You be well. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Once again, this has been Between the Lines, a conversation series with today's brightest thinkers, innovators, and literary minds. On behalf of the New York Irish Center, I'd like to thank Colin Broderick and Michael Kelly for their candid and honest conversation and for taking the time to participate in this program. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you for your continued support as we grow and expand this program and the many other programs here at the New York Irish Center. My name is Stephen Long. Thank you.